So thank you so much for joining today's webinar about how to boost adoption in 365. We're going to focus around analytics and how we can leverage them with engagement and by gamifying that data. Before we get started, some quick housekeeping. First of all, we are recording this session, so if you'd like to share it with colleagues, you'll all get a link after the webinar. And of course, towards the end of our webinar, we'll have time for questions. You can use the questions box in the GoToWebinar panel. Just submit all your questions as we go kind of through the webinar, and we'll leave plenty of time to cover any questions. The webinar will be about 25 minutes, and then we'll have about 5 minutes for Q&A. As for our agenda, we'll start with some quick introductions, just to make sure everyone here knows a little more about what we kind of focus on. From there, we'll dive right into some examples of how we can leverage measurement and analytics in gamification engagement with the goal to really boost adoption of 365. And as I mentioned, we'll conclude with Q&A. For those of you who have just logged in, feel free to send over those questions in the GoToWebinar questions box. So for that quick introduction, we've been providing analytics for 365 for about 17 years now. Started back with SharePoint on-prem and grew with Microsoft to the cloud. Today, we can track everything from SharePoint to Teams, Yammer, Viva, and all of that. The areas that we're going to cover today, we're going to start out with Monitor. And Monitor is the key pillar here, where we're going to collect a lot of rich and helpful, actionable data, which really give our customers the data, and I'd say more than the insights they need to better manage platforms like SharePoint, Teams, Yammer, and all that. Our customers spend so much time and efforts and budgets deploying tools like SharePoint, and with our data, they're able to better manage those environments. They're able to make the improvements and changes that their users could benefit from, and that's what we leverage for the gamification, for the engagement. And that's really the second pillar here. Once we have that data, just looking at dashboards is not enough for our customers. They want to do something. They want to make sure if they find out the sales team is not using SharePoint often, they want to engage with sales. Make sure sales folks are aware of that wonderful new sales collateral. Or if they find out that their brand new HR site is not being used very often, then they want to take action. They want to make sure everyone knows about that wonderful new HR site. The goal is this constant enhancement and improvement of SharePoint for our users, and we can turn that data into a game as well. So instead of just the admins owning the data, we want to make sure those end users have access to the data, can see how they compete with their colleagues, get points and coins. And so we'll conclude by seeing how we can turn that raw data into really nice gamification and leverage that within our organizations as well. So with that, let's hop into a quick environment to see exactly how we can monitor, engage, and gamify all of this data. All right, so hopping here into my browser, let me see if I can full screen this for us. All right, so we'll keep it as is, but we'll start out with the data. That's the kind of the underlying piece for the gamification, for the engagement. And here on the far left-hand side, you can see a list of some of the many out-of-the-box dashboards CardioLog customers get on day one. These dashboards are built on topics of interest to our customers, such as user adoption, search analytics here towards the bottom, navigation. And so we'll look through a handful of these dashboards to show you some of the data that you can get with CardioLog. This first dashboard showing us high-level adoption across 365. So are there some platforms that users are adopting well to? And maybe we should focus on other platforms like maybe Yammer, where we can see that we have less adoption potentially. Our next dashboard would be a SharePoint-centric dashboard. And here, what you're going to see on the far left-hand side is the SharePoint hierarchy. We can, of course, track hybrid deployments of SharePoint on-prem and SharePoint online, as you can see here in my demo. And then we can map out all of your sites. You have my HR site, IT, and we can, of course, drill down to lists, libraries, down to the list item level. So it's very, very easy to see exactly or to report on anything you want within SharePoint, all the way down to the list item level, like specific pages, documents, announcements, really any content that you'd like to report on. Looking at some of the data here under content, I have this chart and table. Let's open this table quickly to show you a little more data. Here by default, we're looking at the most popular content within SharePoint. But you might want to flip that around and show the least popular content. So we can see content that's even not being viewed at all. Imagine you have many documents, pages, maybe entire sites that people are not accessing. Is it because they're old and no longer needed and we can archive them? Or perhaps it's new content that our users are simply unaware of. Besides views, you can see the content was last viewed, last accessed, the duration that the content is viewed for. And of course, you can customize all of this. So if you don't care about the number of likes or the average page load time, you can remove those columns and add other columns of data instead. Under adoption here, we're showing the number of active and inactive users. And below that, a breakdown by department. Department here is an example. This can be any attribute that you'd like to use, like region, country, branch, job title, and any other attributes that you'd like to use here as well. And then I can also use everything here as filters and slicers. So if I click here on the sales department, that will filter the entire dashboard for just the sales team. So I can see exactly what content they are interacting with, or vice versa. If I'm curious about this signed contract, I can click there to filter the entire dashboard for just that content. And then see here that typically that is viewed mostly by the customer service department and folks in the sales team. So very easy here to slice and dice all the data by any attributes that you'd like to leverage. The next dashboard here will focus around search analytics. Here at the bottom left-hand side, you can see the top search terms like benefits, business data. If that's the case, of course, maybe adding a link from our homepage to employee benefits can save a lot of time currently spent searching for that content. So again, the idea is that as you learn more about the user's behavior, you are empowered to make the tweaks and changes, the improvements to make SharePoint that much better for your users. At the top here, a few quick metrics. And a little concerning here in my demo environment, only 49% of searches are clicking on one of the results. So over half of our users arrive at what we call a failed search. And we try to translate the raw data. Here we're translating it into time. You can see we're losing about 94 hours of lost productivity on failed search alone. So this is a great indication saying, hey, there's a challenge here. We might want to find out how we can improve search or improve navigation to get folks the content that they need quicker. Going beyond just usage, the area of usability, here at the bottom right, we'll show page load time by geography. So is your SharePoint portal loading slower in specific parts of the world? Here we're showing by country. You can drill down to state or territory, city, and branch. Technology being used, of course, how do folks access SharePoint, which device, browser, and operating system. And then navigation. All you have to do is copy and paste the URL you're curious about, maybe an important announcement or a blog post, maybe your homepage, and then to find out with previous pages how folks get to that content or where they're going to as the next step in their journey. Or for more in-depth kind of journey or funnel, we can build those here very easily. Here we're going to choose, I'll just take the most popular route that people are navigating through in SharePoint. So here in this use case, if most folks end up here at the training videos page, maybe adding a link to this content wherever here the portal homepage can save them the extra step they currently need to make to get to that content. So again, as we learn more about user behavior, we are empowered to make the tweaks and changes to make SharePoint a better experience for our users. Besides the dashboards, we also provide augmented analytics right on the page itself. We can start out with click maps, and here we can see all these, each blue dot is a mouse click on the page. So you can see exactly on the page what are the more popular areas of the page or the least popular areas that are not being clicked on. If you don't want to count blue dots, we can do that for you. And here now, when I hover over UI element, like this image, a title, button, link, we can see exactly how many times that item was clicked on. So if this link is not clicked on often from our home page, that's a huge waste of real estate right on the home page. But once I'm aware of this, I'm empowered. I can make the tweaks, in this case, maybe change this link and link the content actually needed by our users. We can also display heat maps to show the hotspots of the page, and then scroll maps as well. Is there important content towards the bottom of the page? And then we find out that few folks ever scroll down the page. So that's the data, that's the base for everything that we're going to see today. It's really the ability to track all the usage within platforms like Yammer, Teams, SharePoint, Viva, and all that, and provide the data and insights to better manage. In this part of the tool, we're going to engage users. We're going to take that data and turn it into action. The first step is going to be, who do you want to engage with? Is it everyone? Let me tell everyone in the company about the new HR site that we're launching today. Perhaps in the data, we just found out that a specific group of users, maybe our sales team or our New York office, is not very active. So here under the groupies, we can target a specific group from AD or from SharePoint profiles, or maybe target just the inactive users. Based on the CardioLog data collected, we can target those who have never accessed SharePoint or not done so in the past, let's say 30 days for this example. So now I can target a very specific group of users, just those that are inactive, with a very targeted message. Hi, here's some training on how to use SharePoint, or here's what you're missing out on, and some new content that you should be aware of. Once you've chosen the audience you want to engage with, next you'll choose how to engage with that audience. So some of the options here include an in-app message. We have different options here for different types of pop-ups. If we found out in the data that few folks access our new HR site, perhaps we'll want to show a red head at the top of the page in SharePoint saying, hey, check out the new HR site with a link to that site. And what's really great is it'll only pop up for users who have not yet accessed the HR site. So it's a very dynamic campaign based on who you are and what you're doing, or in this case, not doing or not accessing within SharePoint. For those inactive sales folks, maybe an email or a quick text message would be the best way to get their attention and boost their adoption. Maybe sending a message to everyone in sales, hey, check out the new sales collateral, and including a link to the page in SharePoint with that new sales collateral. The idea to take action based on the data that we saw a few moments ago. Here we'll write, let's just write here, check out the new HR site, for example. I can have a link or a button take folks to that new site. Now, or maybe I want to get some feedback. Let's change this to a question. What do you think about the new HR site? And here I can have folks rate this content. Or maybe on the old site, the current version, I'll have an open text-based question so people can actually give me feedback. What's missing for them? How do you want us to improve the new site? But the idea is I can get real-time feedback as the user is engaging with our portal. Finally, a trigger. You can schedule it based on an action or based on a date and time. So when someone scrolls down the page, they'll see one of these pop-ups, perhaps when they are viewing a specific page. So when they're on the HR site, they will get a pop-up asking for feedback about the HR site. Or when on the CEO blog, they'll get a pop-up asking for feedback about what they want the CEO to blog about. So very, very easy to target all of these campaigns to specific audiences and based on specific behaviors. The final part of our webinar today, before we get to Q&A, will be around gamification. How do we take all that rich data and turn it into more of a game or a competition? Well, here on the SharePoint page at the top, we have our gamification ribbon, and here we're playing as Rebecca. For every action Rebecca makes in SharePoint, whether if that's viewing content, liking, commenting, creating new content, she will get points, or in this case, coins. You can assign a specific value of coins for different actions. So if you want to promote more social actions, such as liking or commenting on content, that might be worth 10 points, whereas viewing content might be worth a single point. So as Rebecca goes through the day and gets points and coins, she will also get these badges here, where she can see how she is accomplishing them. This is both an individual competition where Rebecca competes against her colleagues in her department, in her QA, in the QA team, and also a group competition where the QA team competes against other departments within the organization. So if we want to make sure managers are encouraging their employees and their team to use 365, here that group competition can really show that. We typically reset the game every week or every month, and then you can see the winners of last week's competition. So here we can congratulate them, and they'll appear here for the entire next week of competition. So great way to really get that or encourage them to use SharePoint more. And then finally, we have insights as well. So if everyone from the QA team read the CO blog, We can recommend that for Rebecca as well. And then she's discovering new content that might be interesting to her. And of course, she's gaining points and coins for consuming that new content. So that is a quick kind of walkthrough about the power of analytics and data, and how we can take that data and turn it into both engagement, if we want to drive adoption and get folks to know about new content, and also gamify that data and leveraging gamification to make 365 a little more interesting, competitive, a little more fun, and add those components to it as well. As mentioned, we'll conclude our time today with some Q&A. So I see we have some questions already in the questions box, but if you have any additional questions, feel free to send them at this time as well. All right, let's take a look here. All right, so Michael is asking about Exchange and OneDrive analytics. And so the answer is that CardioLog can definitely track those platforms as well. You can use CardioLog to track Viva Connect, SharePoint, Teams, Yammer, OneDrive, Exchange, and we have other platforms on the roadmap that we're adding in the coming months as well. Another question here from Darren. Okay, so Darren's asking, I think, a similar question. Darren mentions that I haven't really mentioned Teams throughout the webinar, and that's right, I apologize. I've been talking mostly about SharePoint, but as with the previous question, you can definitely use this tool to get data around Teams as well. You'll be able to see which teams are most active, and if you have any inactive teams, maybe many teams that have not been accessed or used in the past weeks or months, you can see what channels are most engaging, the number of meetings, participants, mentions, likes, and so there's a lot of rich data around Microsoft Teams activity as well. All right, last question here is from David. David is asking about licensing. So the CardioLog license is based on the amount of users that we're tracking. So the license is a yearly subscription, and it's based on the amount of traffic or users that are actually using platforms like SharePoint, Teams, and all that. And David, we can send you a quick email right after our webinar today with more information about the licensing as well. So if you have any further questions after the webinar, you can feel free to contact us on our website, and we'll be happy to set up a demo for you or your colleagues. But for now, I thank you all so much for your time today. Have a great rest of the day.